Are you a competitive driver looking for an advantage on the rocks? Or maybe you just like the finest quality products when you can buy them? Well, today we're going to talk about the Magnum motors from Holmes Hobbies. I'm John Holmes. Thanks for tuning in. I'm proud to announce the new version of the Magnum motors. You may be familiar with them already, but the majority of people, I think, aren't really familiar with these motors because there's something that's outside of the norm as far as what most people want to use. They are a more expensive motor, but they are tuned more so for competition use with good low speed control and torque density. So to start off with, how are the Magnum motors different from a normal motor? The easiest way is to just simply look at two armatures next to each other. And this is a normal Crawlmaster motor, and this is a Crawlmaster Magnum motor. And as you can see, the difference in the diameter between these two is pretty noticeable. This one's a 23 millimeter for a standard motor and 28 millimeter for the Magnums. And that's really where it generates its edge on torque. And also it has really great low speed control because that's how I engineered it. So here are our two variations. Here's the old style Magnum housing, which essentially just looked like an old 540 housing, but we did put neodymium magnets inside so that we had enough room for these large Magnum rotors. And this is our new housing style. And if we look as compared to the 540, the new housing style, this is of course a stubby version, which is slightly shorter, but the new housing style just plain looks cooler. And along with the changes that I made to make it look good and assemble easier as well, it also shed a few grams of weight because, you know, making these for competition, guys, of course I'm going to shed some weight if it doesn't affect the performance. So that's what we did. So what I would like to do is take this Magnum motor apart for you real quick, and I will show you the insides. So they use a standard Sagami end bell. I wanted to make sure that the parts were readily available, easy to service. So that's what we did. This assembles like any normal 540 motor. Sometimes a little bit more difficult to get these apart because when we look down the barrel of it, it has really strong neodymium magnets. And I don't want to touch the commutator with my hand. That's always a bad idea, so I use my shirt. There we go, got her out. So, just a wallop of copper in there. We look as compared to the standard Pro Crawlmaster here and our Crawlmaster Magnum, just so much more wire. And this is one way that they get a lot better performance. More wire means a lower resistance on the motor, and a lower resistance means more torque output is available. And then if we look down the barrel of that can, you can see real thin neodymium magnets as compared to a normal motor, which maybe I have one sitting around. Yep, here we go. So we look down the barrel of a normal motor and yeah, those ceramic magnets, they do the job, but they're just not nearly as power dense as a neodymium. And since we have much thinner magnets going to the Magnum, that's where I get that ability to use the large rotor. So a few things kind of adding up all together to make a pretty sweet build. Now, we're gonna look at the stubby version. And the stubby version, weight-wise, is in between our Puller 400 and 500. I did that on purpose. This guy drives like a maniac. I hadn't cut the comm on this one yet. So if we compare our standard 540 to our stubby version, you can see that it has a shorter stack. And that's where we get some weight savings going from the standard 540 to the stubby size. And, you know, most people don't need all the power of this Magnum, you know, the full-size Magnum. It's just a lot of motor. If you're driving a shafty or something like that, you get better drag brake, of course, using a larger rotor, a full-size motor. It weighs just the same as a normal 540, so you won't have a weight penalty using that. But if you want a little bit more weight savings, this Magnum Stubby is definitely the way to go, and probably what I'm going to be installing in pretty much all my comp rigs. Since it has this really large rotor, the driving feel is actually very similar to a revolver. So it has really heavy drag brake to it. It has a very fine startup to it, and just generally it drives very predictable. And as you can see on these production versions, we actually went with a gold-plated magnet just because it was sweet. It's good for corrosion resistance, but honestly, when we're talking about a motor that is a higher dollar motor, I feel that gold-plated magnets just really set it off. And as I stated, the startup on these is just extremely fine, very smooth. And the shaft turns by hand, smoother than pretty much all of the other motors in our catalog, which I will tell you was not an easy feat to do with neodymium magnets. It is One of the harder things that I've ever done, but got it done. There we go. Goes back together like any old normal motor. Be careful not to pinch your fingers because of those strong magnets. And we still have our spacers in there. Make sure I assemble this one correctly. There we go. So easy as that. They service easily like a normal motor. They use regular old parts on top, but they have a pretty sweet armature inside. So that's really the rundown. If you're just the kind of guy that loves high quality products, we do make these armatures in-house. I design the entire housing in-house. I no longer machine all the parts, but you know, you can only do so many things in a day, and sometimes we do have to get a little bit of help in that regard. But we do finish these in-house with the armatures. We hand wind these with a maximum wire size. I guess I should show you on the actual Magnum arm here. Pattern wound for the 3 slots, which we only offer in 45 turn and 38 turn, because when we get too fast, the 3 slot just doesn't quite start up as smooth as I think a rock crawler motor should do. These are great for supers though, the 3 slot version, the Torquemaster version. So we wind these in-house. We do epoxy balancing on the rotors. The epoxy balancing is far superior to a drill balancing in my opinion. Not only do you keep a better torque density to the motor, but the startup is much more consistent from motor to motor to motor. And you know, the drill balancing, it works. It absolutely works, but it's not something that we do on there. Then we sink these in epoxy for the wires. Then we have a nice high silver content braze filler that we do on the commutator, and then of course finish it out on a dynamic balancer, a 2-plane dynamic balancer that gets them, you know, just as smooth running as we would possibly do, high efficiency, low vibrations, about as much quality as we can possibly put into a brush motor. These are really a pleasure to manufacture. It's a little bit different. They're a little bit more difficult to manufacture, to tell you the truth, but just that feeling that you get when you have a motor that is built by your own hands it's really second to none. So we love making these Magnums. I love the way that they drive, and I'm going to be converting all of my brushless comp rigs over to brushed because of these. Just love them. Just absolutely love them. If you do have any more questions about these, why you would select them, or maybe some variations in the motors, just leave a comment down below and I will definitely get to them. But as always, thanks for tuning in and have a good day.